Prasad, so you go through the recording, so that should help you figure out what we are doing there. So in Zuul part 2, I was thinking with respect to the enhancement that we have to do. Okay. So the first enhancement that I can think of right now is with respect to some request related stuff. As in, when you when you receive a request, you guys have to start tracking that user information as well. Okay. So in the API, in the request content, you will always have the IP of the caller, right? So that IP has to be mapped to a geospatial index. Okay, as in you have to map it to a geolocation in terms of country, state, and place. Okay, 3 levels. Pin code is also available. So there are open libraries for it. Okay, so there is geospatial index, which actually takes an IP and then kind of maps it to the geolocation, is what I believe. Just figure it out. I think it's there in Java. So you have to fetch it, and then whenever you get an input IP, please use that input IP and then fetch this information and store it along with the request ID. So this should happen in your correlation filter. In the correlation filter, along with adding a request ID, you should also pass this information as well. And this information should now be used for analysis purposes later on as to what is the traffic in Anuvaad, from where is it coming from. I had explored a library on that front. One minute. But I forgot what was it. I had explored. I'm not sure if I actually I'm not sure if I actually checked that code in, but there was a library which does it. XML, yeah. Netflix. It is.
Yeah, basically the API whatever is used in Zuul is to know the traffic manual and other stuff.
Yeah, so Zuul is a API gateway. Okay, so Zuul is an API gateway which does redirection. So once you receive any request on your Anuvaad platform, it actually redirects it to a specific service. Should it go to workflow manager? Should it go to translator? Should it go to content handler? So that decision is done at Zuul. Also authentication authorization, as in whether the input user, whether it's an authentic user or not, or whether the user has access to the particular API that he or she is trying to access or not. So authentication, authorization, and redirection. So these three things are done at Zuul. So acts as a gateway. Along with that, you have to do some request tracking also now. So that is the enhancement that is required in Zuul. Okay. So there are, I think, multiple open source libraries for it. But then some of them will also, okay, so this is a geospatial index, right? So for geospatial index, you need to download those shape files is what I believe. I think they're called as shape files or something. So you have to actually download those shape files, create like a database of your own, and then create a geospatial index and use that to map your IPs to the geolocation. Like this is coming from India, this is coming from the United States, all of that. Okay, so that is one enhancement in Zuul, which is required. And then second part is with respect to the request tracking, as in right now the correlation ID, although it passes through the request, we are not able to track it as such. So you should create like a single database where a correlation ID is used to track the request and response formats. Right now there are no request enhancements and response enhancements. You guys have to start adding enhancements there also. Like post filters have to be written. Right now we don't have any post filters, right? Only pre filters are there. So please add some post filters also where you can add some response related headers or anything to the response back. Start doing some POCs with respect to pre-hook and post hooks. Okay. So basically create like different sets of users, not based on role, but maybe based on IP or something like that, a geolocation or something like that, and start writing pre-hooks and post hooks for that particular group of users. So suppose a request is coming from France, there's a certain way your system should behave. System should behave as in, I'm not saying that the whole translation flow should change. It's minor changes in request and response. Take that as an example, right? So get used to writing post hooks and pre-hooks, because once the ecosystem evolves with Shunya, Chitralekha, all of that into place, gateway is going to act as a very important component of the system. Okay, so that is important.
Request can be
Any request. Suppose you want to start a workflow, right? That is a request which passes through Zuul. So before it passes through Zool, suppose it is coming from a particular set of IPs, you might want to add one extra header to it, or you might want to remove some information. Or when it comes to response, you might want to add some information or remove some information, like mask some information in the response, right? All of those. So those post hooks, pre hooks, essentially filters should be written. And then, uh, yeah, single sign on. Okay. So now, since Anuvaad, Chitralekha, all of these might come onto a single platform, like most of them can be a part of NLTM, right? So you might also want to explore an option as SSO. SSO is single sign-on. So use single sign-on across all the systems for Anuvaad, Chitralekha, and all of that. If you use single sign-on, then authentication authorization also has to happen in the same way, right? So you should support that also. Zool will support it. You should be able to make sure that that is added. And then update some exception formats as well, like make sure that the exceptions are much more. And right now we just have code and message, right? Maybe if you want to return a trace tomorrow, or maybe if you want to return some other information, that should be good. Rate limiting right now is IP based. I think IP based or user based. I think it's IP based right now. From a given IP, you can't have more than 1,000 requests per 10 seconds. So that's the sort of configuration. Tomorrow you want to remove it from a particular okay. So tomorrow you might want to remove it from a particular location. Like I don't want any request coming from say Bangalore, right? So you should be able to block it via Zoom. Now, how will that happen? That will only happen when you create this whole geospatial index, IP mapping, and all. So it's a very interesting problem to solve, and it's already available. You don't have to do anything. There are already available libraries. You just have to integrate it and use it in the right way, in the data format that you need. Okay. So whitelisting, blacklisting based on IPs, that is one more thing. Role-based access control is already there. Authentication, authorization, rate limiting. Just thinking if anything else is required. Yeah, I think these are good enough. Okay, so I think where is Jira?
Java.
No, it's a Java service, as in you can implement. Yeah, Zuul is Java. So Jira. So, just one second. Let me see what is happening in here for Wealth. Uh, okay, sorry. Okay, that is thing. Where did my Jira go? I think it was. ETA backend changes for GUS data sets. Okay, this is Ulka. Anuvaad is what? AN board. Huh?
NMT.
No. Ulka AN board. Kanban board is for Ulka, no? Jira. I'm talking about Jira.
93. 93 for is I think 103.
One. No, I mean, I just get so projects is there. Okay, go to Anuvaad. And if you go to Vishal, okay, I think that was added there. Anyway, cool. So one more thing that is required in Zool is API key based access. Right now, JWT token are used in Anuvaad. Okay, so all access happens through JWT. You log in and you get it. But we might want to use a API key based access as well. Like for example, for a certain set of users, they should only be able to access through a particular API key, and we should be able to track the usage of the system through that key. Like how many, because Anuvaad is of course open source, but if tomorrow someone wants to use Anuvaad and monetize it, then they will need API keys, right? So Anuvaad as an open source platform should also support an API key based implementation. Okay, so that enhancement also is needed. I mean, like a parallel to Zuul. That is one more thing. You're noting down those enhancements, right? Yeah, good. So yeah, so these are the things that are in mind. So just discuss it with Karthik and Arvind. They will tell you the priority. Okay, but for now, Zuul is very stable. Like with the basic redirection, authentication, authorization, request filters, response filters, pre-post, error exception, all of them are happening perfectly fine. Okay, everything is well defined. We don't see any problem in Zuul except for times when the service itself is unreachable via Zuul. Like if Zuul is trying to hit workflow manager with workflow manager container is down, then you will get an error in Zuul. Apart from that, there are no issues as such. Okay. So it's very stable both in Ulka and Anuvaad. So now whatever enhancements you make, yeah, just create. My suggestion would be to, since you're working on Zool for the first time, create like a feature branch and then you start making your enhancements there. Don't make it on the actual branch. Okay, and don't merge it with develop and master unless it is like thoroughly tested, like properly battle tested with high number of requests, parallel requests, concurrency and all of that. Okay. Make sure that it works in all use cases. And then request tracking, and then also maybe some information, okay, session information, right? Say, what is a session? Session is your activity between one login and one logout. Before login and logout, whatever activity you perform. So Zool should be able to sessionize your activity, as in, if I pass a session ID, I should be able to get what APIs did the user hit, what was the request and response time for each APIs, if possible, even some UI actions, more like telemetry. So we have telemetry for our UI. Similarly, Zool can act as a telemetry for backend if you use it right. Like anything that comes on the API layer, right? That IO could be tracked in whatever way you want. So see that you can, if you can kind of, add and draw some session related information, right? Because yeah, either it expires on its own or you go and log out, right? Even when you log out, it's like a manual override. So the session expires. And otherwise, the session expires on its own. In both cases, if someone gives you a session ID, you should be able to tell what happened in that session, how many APIs were hit per API, what was the request response time, even if possible, request response objects as well. Okay, just in case. No, a session ID is only one ID for a given time frame. So you log in, your session is active for 24 hours. In 24 hours, all the APIs call you make is a part of the same session. Session one. Yeah. Okay. Then you log out, then a new session is created. Yeah, a new session is created. So yeah, so activity between one login and its respective logout is your session. Okay, so you should do the session tracking activity as well. So what happens is through user ID you can get session. Through session you can get the activity. It's like that. So session is, what is the session ID? Session ID is your JWT token. Yeah, the access token. The JWT token is your session ID. So with the user ID, you should be able to find a session ID. Say, for example, what happens is sometimes, let's say some 4 to 5 workflows did not end at all. All of them are in progress state. The Kibana logs will have the session ID. Okay, every entry in the Kibana log has the session ID. If now Zool can track session information, you can just use that session ID and query Zool's table and find out what happened in that session, right? You can kind of find out in that given session how many APIs were called, what was the response time, and you can kind of figure out if there is any problem there, right? And with that session ID, you can also find a time frame, right? Okay, so this session was active from 10 in the morning to say 12, 11 in the morning. So for 1 hour. For that 1 hour, fetch all the sessions that were active in the system and then see if anything happened for other users. You get it? All of this can be done and all of this have to be done. Okay. So trying to sessionize your stream of APIs is a very good option for you to perform any type of audit that you want to do. Okay. So try to include that. Okay. So geo-index mapping and then session-related information. User session mapping can already be obtained by Kibana. When I say DB, you don't have to create MongoDB. You can use Elasticsearch for this, okay? Because Elasticsearch gives you a better option for all of this aggregation and stuff like that. Of course, use a Mongo as a backup store, but you can, like how we have Kibana logs for our service logs. Similarly, this can be our audit logs types. Okay. Uh, okay. Yeah, I think these should be good. If all of these are included in Zuul, then Zuul is going to become very powerful component of your system. Like it is going to have so much of data, so much of processing. Yeah, but I think this should be good enough. Then it's going to become like a full-fledged gateway. All of these were in pipeline, but since I got occupied with multiple things, Anuvaad, Ulka, etc., couldn't implement these. But yeah, that. So any questions, any doubts in Zool, anything that you didn't understand or anything that you want to ask? Now is the time. Sure, you go through the first one. I think, I mean, should be very straightforward, okay, in terms of understanding. If you have any doubts, I think Hanumesh and Apurva also were there. So you can just chat with them and do some amount of brainstorming. And even after that, if there are any doubts persisting, then we can discuss together. Should not be a problem. He took the KT. He has not worked on Zool or Java before, but yeah, I think he should start doing it. Mostly 9th, that is next to next week. Yeah. Now 9th. Monday, 11th October is Monday, I guess. Basically, second week of October. That's the plan for now. We'll see. That is the plan. All clear, boys? Cool then. I think we can end this session as well. So, Zool done. So this completes Anuvaad KTs, right? So tomorrow we'll start off with Ulka. Ulka, I think Zool is already done. Publish is what we have to do. I'll do it with Ashwin. Yeah, I think post that Thursday onwards, reverse KTs. Okay, you guys sit together. I mean, you guys as in you both, Abhishek, Hanumesh, Apurva, whoever like who has done taken KT, right? Sit together and come up with a reverse KT plan, and then start scheduling meetings. Okay. Don't schedule like more than say around 1.5 hour should be enough. Okay. Say 2 hours max. Okay, one session, not more than that.